Welcome to today's session, everyone.
We are Pre-Med CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021.
Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities, with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone.
We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students,
people that lack the financial resources, or just those who do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Many of our sessions will end up with a Q&A with the speakers.
Any questions that you have, you may put it in the Q&A session on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answer.
After you have attended our event, you can log into our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with the upcoming events or just want to tell your pre-med friends about the Pre-Med CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as @PreMedCC.
Hello, everyone. We want to thank you for coming here tonight to join us with Mr. Nunez and Mr. Navarro with Pre-Med CC. And they've been here for the past few weeks, really presenting about various topics with physician assistant programs. And so I want to welcome both of them today. Mr. Nunez, Mr. Navarro, you can go ahead.
Sweet, thank you, Kirsten. Is that how you say it? All right, sweet.
Yes, that's right.
I'm always botching names, and so I see there are 15 of us currently. So welcome to everyone who's joined us on this lovely Sunday, and thank you for taking the time to join us. I know today's topic is to some students exciting, to other students it's like, oh, I've heard this before, but still. It is a very important topic that I think Omar and I are very passionate about, and hopefully the essential plan with this session is going to kind of hopefully be a shorter one, and hopefully get you guys fired up about the fact that we need you in medicine and the reasons why, and hopefully give you some numbers and stats to hopefully just kind of paint a more accurate picture of what we're dealing with in terms of the diversity of our nation and the diversity of our profession. And so let me pop up the PowerPoint slides and we'll get started. Okay, got that going. And then we click this button here. Let's see. All right. Are you seeing it in the, you can see the slide?
I see it on my end, yeah.
All right, and it doesn't look like the PowerPoint file, whatever, the like edit mode? Okay, good.
It's perfect.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Mario Navarro, and today we're going to be talking about empowering underrepresented minority students in the PA profession. Let me advance this.
And by the way, my name is Omar Manuel Nunez. And I'm a PA student, third-year PA student currently at Stanford. And then there's Mario's beautiful face before I became an official PAC.
Yeah, fun fact about this picture, when we first started this series, session 1, I wasn't yet board certified. And it's kind of frowned upon for you to essentially call yourself a PAC. Because it's known, and legally it's known as misrepresentation, and so we don't recommend doing that. And so if you notice on my white coat, when I submitted this picture, I actually went and blurred out the C from my white coat, and so right here it just says PA dash, And so that's something funny that I don't think anyone knows about this picture. But yeah, this is our beautiful faces. You can tell we both had fresh cuts here. And yeah, I studied at UC Davis in Sacramento, California. And then Omar is at Stanford, also kind of about an hour and a half or 2 hours away from UC Davis. And so yeah, we're kind of from the same area, Northern California. But yeah,
both from LA County, right?
Yep, LA, born and raised. Yeah. So we're going to start off with kind of zooming out to the big picture before we pigeonhole ourselves into the diversity or lack of diversity of medicine. And I kind of wanted to show you guys two graphs about the diversity of the US. And you can access this information from the US Census data, which is available. I think it's like uscensus.gov, one of those .gov websites. But this first figure here highlights the fact that the most prevalent race or ethnicity group by county in 2020, if you look at the yellow, is still white alone or non-Hispanic. And one thing to keep in mind, I know a lot of the people who are joining us are from all over the country, but we have quite a majority from California, and Pre-Med CC is based out of California. And so one thing to highlight here is the fact that California is actually, for our Central Valley and most of Southern California, we are predominantly Hispanic Latino. And it's also important to highlight the fact that in what's Arizona and the western southwestern border of Texas is predominantly Hispanic Latino. And if we look at this next figure, this is what I am really kind of like also shocked me because I hadn't seen these numbers in a while. But the second most prevalent race or ethnicity groups by county across the board, it's actually very, very diverse, super diverse. And so just to put it in perspective, I believe the census data showed that there are around 331 million Americans across the United States. And for the second most prevalent races or ethnicity groups, what's considered the West and Midwest is green, which accounts for our Hispanic Latino population. In the East and East Coast, and what would this be called again, Omar? I forget.
The South, I guess.
The South, yeah, the South. Yeah, I'm kind of bad with my geography right now. It would be Black African Americans, non-Hispanics. And then if we look a little bit more north, and you'll see that it's actually 2 or more races, non-Hispanic. So quite a bit of diversity up in like the northern borders. But again, this highlights the fact that the US, and as you'll see in a little bit with some of these other stats that we're going to throw around, is pretty diverse. And we're kind of a melting pot, as we know and as we've heard growing up, right, in like your history classes in college, if you've ever taken courses about US history or even like the makeup of our cultures, you'll notice that we are diverse, and we are only projected to get more diverse as the years go by. One also graphic that I wanted to highlight is the fact that the racial and ethnic composition of children under 18 is also getting more diverse. And so in 2016, if you look at this graph here, this light lavender purple corresponds to about 51% were non-Hispanic white, 24.9% were Hispanic, 15% Black, 7.1% all others. And in 2060, it's projected that this makeup is actually gonna essentially kind of start to flatten out, and you're seeing again much more diversity, not only for all adults but also in our youth and young generations, which kind of makes sense because if you think about it, as the years go by, you have families that are becoming a lot more culturally diverse. I've met, I have family members who are, at least my family is Latino from both sides, but we have family members dating Pacific Islanders or who are dating Black or African American. And with that blending of cultures, it only makes sense that you're going to see our offspring, the next generations, only become more diverse. And that's what we're essentially highlighting here with this graph, again, from the US Census data. And so this last graphic here, I know it has kind of a bunch of numbers and can kind of be overwhelming to look at, but really what this graph is showing us here is the fact that we are a nation of immigrants. And so what US Census looked at here was foreign-born people living in the United States between 1850 to 2010, and then they graphed out the projection to 2060. And if we look here at 2020, essentially the percentage of individuals who are foreign-born individuals living in the United States is about 12.9% or 13%. Between now 2020 projecting towards 2060, that number is going to be rising closer to 17%, which again only tells us that this country, the United States, is a nation of immigrants. Essentially 1 in 4 individuals is an immigrant. And when I say immigrant, it's not exclusive to Latin America or to Mexico. I'm talking all over. And if I know I don't highlight it here in these slides, but I believe one of the highest groups that is continuing to immigrate into the U.S. is our Asian populations. And so, again, this is just to highlight the fact that the United States is a nation of immigrants. We are a melting pot, and it's only going to continue to get more diverse, which in my eyes is a good thing, because again, that diversity is what brings the sabor and flavors and kind of the beauty of this country. And like the fact that we're able to be here and share, kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember that one song that I feel like I sang this in elementary school, that this land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Islands. That really is good times. Yeah, good times, yeah. But that's really what these numbers are showing us, that this is our land, and this is not just one group's land, but a collective group of foreigners, of immigrants, of people who have lived here for 5-6 generations, and people who are starting a new generation in this country. And so I'll let you, Omar, take over for this one.
So just to further highlight everything that Mario has said and mentioned, we keep hearing the melting pot, the mixed salad, the melting pot. And really, when we say the melting pot, right, like this is what it looks like. We have all shades of brown, white people, people from Middle East, African American, and we're all kind of mixed together, especially in other cities, other states, compared to others, right? Right now in California, right? I live in the Bay Area. It looks like this, and it may change from like city to city, but overall, this is the melting pot right here. And this is what diversity in the US essentially looks like. Yeah. And that's to, go ahead, man.
Well, I was just gonna add, Omar, I know for just the fact that Omar and I identify as Latinos, we're gonna focus a little bit and zoom in on Latino kind of health disparities, but we want to highlight the fact that these are not just unique to Latinos. Like the disparities in the numbers that we're going to be citing are not just affecting Latinos. Like we are seeing these numbers affect all groups and all underrepresented minorities across the board. And so hopefully we'll be able to hear this next slide here.
A new census report.
Let's see if they can.
Just a little clip I found on SNL that I wanted to add, just to like highlight that this is being recognized. So,
go ahead. All right, let's see if let me know if you guys can hear the audio. If not, we'll just put the closed captionings. Hopefully that'll work.
A new census report shows that by the end of the year 2060, 1 out of every 4 Americans will be Latino. That's how good Bad Bunny's music is.
Were you able to hear that?
I mean, all right, awesome. So yeah, it's just to highlight everything we've been mentioning, how like it's becoming very well known, and obviously why not have Bad Bunny on there. And I love to watch this now, I'm not going to lie. But anyways, moving forward, I wanted to further talk about the projected increase of Latinx or Hispanic populations in the U.S. So currently, right now, California has, of the 40 million people or so, 39% are Latinos or Latinx or Hispanic. And by the year 2050, it's projected to be 50%. So 1 in every 2 individuals will be Latino or Hispanic or Latinx descent. Currently, right now, 48% of babies born in California are Latinx or Hispanic. So it's every 1 of 2 babies being popped out right now are from Latinx, Hispanic descent. I think that's pretty mind-boggling. Right now, currently in Texas, 40% of the population is Latino. So 40% already there in Texas. And other states like Florida is 27%, which is a pretty big number. And then overall in the entire United States, 19% of the population is Latinx or Hispanic. And in 2050, it is expected to be 30%. So 1 in every 3 individuals in this country will be of Latinx or Hispanic descent. So that's just to highlight the percentage of Latinx and Hispanics currently in the United States and where it's going. And as I mentioned, and you've seen the projections typically, as Mario mentioned, like it's going to continue to go up, right? Not just in Latinx, Hispanic, but in other minority individuals, especially those that are continuing to migrate to the United States.
And so now that we kind of, I was to say, now that we kind of highlighted gave you guys like the macro view of what the diversity looks like in the US, now we're going to zoom in on the PA profession. And so there in the US, as reported by the NCCPA, which is our national board certifying committee, they reported in 2023 that there are roughly 168,000 PAs practicing in the US. And we account for more than 500 million patient interactions per year, which again is pretty mind-boggling to think about that. In any given year, a patient is sitting across or they're talking to a physician assistant or physician associate, and we're impacting that many lives across the country. And so the American Academy of Physician Assistants, the AAPA, they actually put out a salary report that also includes some aspects of the diversity of the profession. And this report, they essentially send it out to PAs and essentially members that are part of the American Academy of PAs. And I believe for 2023, they had about 10,000 individuals respond to their surveys. And in those surveys, there's quite a bit of questions like, what specialty do you work in? Are you male, female? And they also have questions about the race of the respondents. And what that survey showed is that for 2023, 85.4% of respondents of this survey, of the 10,000 that responded, were white or Caucasian descent or origin. 7.3% were Asian. 2.7% identified as being of 2 or more races. 2.5% identified as being Black or African American. 1.6% were other. And then American Indian or Alaska Native were 0.4%. Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander was 0.2%. And so I know I titled this slide diversity of the PA profession, but as harsh as this probably sounds, this slide could be better titled the lack of diversity in the PA profession. And that's what we're gonna kind of highlight and talk about tonight. So for more than 7, and this isn't so much diversity, but more the actual gender identification of respondents, more than 7 in 10 were female, a proportion that has been increasing for the past 30 years. And then the red is now the actual diversity numbers. Approximately 8 in 10 PAs, or 85.4%, identified as white. 6.4% of PAs reported they are of Hispanic, Latinx, or Spanish origin. 4.5% of PAs reported they are of Black or African American origin. 8% of PAs reported they are of Asian origin, and 0.4% of PAs reported they are of American Indian or indigenous origin. And so I think we can kind of all agree collectively that these numbers that we're seeing here do not necessarily reflect the diversity and the numbers and essentially that map that we saw of the wide diversity that exists in the United States. And that is a problem. That is an issue. And so this guy named Richard Botner, I was kind of doing my research for today's talk, and I really liked what he said about this. Racial inequality continues to tear at the moral fabric of our country. That inequality exists in every aspect of our nation. Sadly, this holds true in patient care and the demographics of the clinicians who practice it. And so what essentially he's highlighting here is the fact that it's not limited to the disparities that we're seeing in race and ethnicity, are not limited to kind of the history that we are pretty acquainted with of the United States, but it's also bled into and has kind of been a part of medicine. Medicine is not immune to kind of the difficult racial and ethnic history and disparities that have existed. Some of the things that are not mentioned in these slides, but that we can look back to, are like the Tuskegee research trials, and that really did a lot of harm for our African American populations, and we are seeing the consequences of studies like that. And if you don't know what that study is, I highly recommend that you, at the end of the session, search up Tuskegee research studies, because essentially what was being done there is that we were taking a certain racial group, and medicine was conducting studies without that group's consent, and a lot of people died, and a lot of harm, a lot of mistrust, a lot of just inequality was perpetrated through that study, and it has led to kind of the state of mistrust that we see with a lot of our minority patients, and the trust that they have in their providers, the trust that they have in medicine. And so, Omar, I'll let you take this slide.
Yeah. So why is there a lack of diversity, one might ask, right? And typically, like when we think about it and when we dive in and look into it, the workforce falls short of mirroring the national demographics, as we just showed, and mostly because of the lack of diversity in student enrollments, right? And before someone becomes a PA, a doctor, a nurse, they have to be trained, get into the program themselves, and there is a lack of underrepresented minorities enrolled in these institutions and programs. And there have been a few studies that have systemically examined diversity across PA programs at the national level, and it's little known about best practices for consistently graduate diverse groups of students. So it's difficult to know why this is going on, but a good way is to portray, to speak about the necessity and the urgency to address these disparities, especially in these programs in main large metropolitan cities, right, where there's more diversity, more minorities, like in Los Angeles, in San Francisco. If Los Angeles is predominantly Latino or Latinx or Hispanic, the workforce should represent and mirror that, right? So we can better treat them, we can better be there for them and understand them, be culturally competent, and just provide service just through making them feel comfortable speaking their own language. And in our healthcare system, there's that urgency. We have that urgency to need to address this disparity. And as students right now, as the population, the upcoming generation population, it's important to advocate for ourselves, and speak about this, to apply pressure on these institutions, to show them that that underrepresented Latinos and minorities in medicine is doing a disservice, not only for our own people but for our communities, right? The very same communities that these medical programs or any programs are serving in their cities, and in doing so, we can mirror the richness of our communities, and provide the best possible care, right? Optimize patient care to its fullest. Because at the end of the day, the way I see it is we are treating, a lot of us who go into medicine, probably has to maybe do from family, wanting to be there for our family, for our loved ones. Maybe we're experiencing something traumatic for ourselves and our family, and we just want to be able to comfort them in many ways. And so the way I think about it, and some of y'all might think about it, is I'm doing this for my tios and my tias that are going to be there, right? They were the motivating factor for me to go into medicine, and I'm going to continue to think about that and fully immerse myself in that, to like add that extra fuel for me to like get through the most arduous days in medicine. So yeah, anything to add there, Mario?
And what I would add also as well, kind of some of the factors that contribute to the lack of diversity in student enrollment for PA programs. I think there's studies out there that we didn't include here today, but you can, if you're interested, can kind of like Google or search it up. But really, it starts from the beginning of like elementary school, kind of how a lot of the essentially the educational background of a lot of underrepresented minority students, they're inherently coming from high schools and elementary schools and areas that aren't your highest performing academically, that haven't had the opportunities that, let's say, again, this is not to dig or say that, you know, like private schools are bad, but the reality is that the opportunities, the resources, the tutoring, the SAT, the ACT prep, the MCAT prep, essentially all of the resources that are offered to students coming from private schools, who are coming from essentially schools where there is an abundance of economic investments into these schools. Those students are of course going to perform better on standardized testing and are going to be able to, let's say, not have to go to a, for example, a community college, go to a four-year university, not have to work while they're in college, focus all of their time on getting A's, and are ending up with higher GPAs, higher volunteer hours, just because of the nature of the opportunities and resources that have been that they've been privileged with. And I think all of it's multifactorial, the factors that are contributing to the lack of diversity for student enrollment. But all of this to say that if you're a student that's maybe graduated from a high school that, you know, that struggled or that most students didn't graduate, or didn't go to college, or if you find yourself currently kind of feeling stuck at the community college level or feeling a lot of pressure with like the financial aspect of your education, just know that those are factors that are essentially, as sad as it sounds, are the things that are keeping our underrepresented minorities from applying, from enrolling, and from becoming the providers that our communities need. And so all of that is to hopefully encourage you to keep on pressing forward, keep on pushing, and keep your goal, you know, keep your eyes set on this goal of becoming a PA, becoming a doctor, a pharmacist, or whatever it is that you want to do. Because if you're here, if you're one of the 19 participants that are here at this talk, this is, you know, something that you care about. And so that is hopefully, with you seeing all these numbers and with us kind of highlighting this, it serves as an encouragement that if Omar could do it, you can do it. If Mario can do it, you can do it. And there are students that are Black, that are Asian, Pacific Islander, that are Native American origins who are doing it too. And ultimately, as we'll see right now, we're going to highlight two main components on why we care about diversity and how it really impacts patient outcomes. And so before we dive into that, I'll let you zoom out and also talk about the lack of diversity, not just in the PA profession, but in medicine in general.
So yeah, exactly. So right now, currently 6% for physicians. When we looked at physicians as a whole, these are the numbers that we were to extrapolate. So 6% of physicians are Latinx and 2.5% are Latina. And then again, right, the US population consists of 19% Latinx or Hispanics. In California, it's 39%, yet only 6% of those physicians are Latina or Latinx. Less than 4% are Black currently. And very saddening is that over the past 40 years, the number of Black men as physicians has gone down. And that's like, what does that mean, right? Like, why is this happening? And obviously there's a tremendous amount of like factors that go into this, right? It's a multifactorial thing essentially, right? We got structural racism, all this going on, but overall, no matter what, like we are failing our communities. right? We know that like I mentioned, most of California is super diverse, right? And yet like seeing these numbers, hopefully it like not only like makes you wake up a little bit and add some fuel to you, but also like acknowledge it and then try to do something about it and motivate you that much more to go into medicine. Here, Latinos, we extrapolated more data, and Latino MD stats, which honestly, for the most part, as we get the picture, like they typically reflect the PA stats as well. So the combined medical MDs right now is 9.8%. So like residency, practicing doctors, fellows, currently residents 7.2%, practicing physicians 6.9%, as I mentioned. 43% of the physicians that are Latinx or Hispanic were born in the US. 43%. So that means the other 57% were born in a different country. And here it just shows like of the 43% of physicians that were born in the US, predominantly they are Mexican, and there's 15% Cuban, 13% Puerto Ricanos, and 5% Colombian. And the other birthplaces, 21% South America, 5% Puerto Rico, 9% Cuba, 8% Mexico, and then 5% Central American. So just imagine if these physicians from their own countries did not come out here, how far worse that would be. And typically, like, they probably just think about like the coming from these countries, right? They probably had less, probably went through more, and yet they're still coming out here and they're basically holding it down for us, right? More than half of them are coming from there. And that's something to acknowledge, and not only be thankful about, but acknowledge, and also like fuel one to like want to like pursue medicine. Like, you live in this country, it might be difficult to in a variety of ways, but if other people, other individuals from different countries are doing it and coming out here and retaking all these board exams, and becoming practicing practitioners, and like, why can't we, right? And then anything to add here, Mario?
No, I was muted. I would say no. I would just agree with you. I think you hit the nail on the head on the fact that, again, if we can look to our colleagues that are international medical graduates who are coming into this country, like you said, and are doing this thing and being part of the physician PA workforce, and to think, we can only imagine, right? Like what the challenges that they've had to encounter, the language barriers, and also just like the political difficulties of securing visas and all of that stuff. And so, I think you hit the nail on the head with the fact that if they can do it, we can too. And then we have, let me advance the slide. All right.
And then so a little bit more on that, like, why do we care? Like, as I mentioned, like what are the outcomes of the medical field not reflecting the population that we're treating? So overall, there's been several studies on multiple aspects that Latino, Latinx, Hispanics suffer worse healthcare outcomes. That's in cancer and chronic diseases. One big one, a recent and relevant one, was during COVID, Latino, Hispanic individuals were 11 times more likely to die from COVID compared to their white counterparts. And 7 out of 10 pregnant deaths, COVID deaths, were of Latinas. So out of every 10 deaths from COVID, and they were pregnant, 7 of them were Latinas. And honestly, that's like a kind of awakening, right? Like, this is our families, our tias, our tios, our relatives, our tias friends, our churches, the church friends, like they are dying, and it's sad, right? It's sad, it's disheartening, and like something has to be done about it, right? And there's this one, I wish I could have found the study, but I was actually at a virtual conference, and one of the doctors was talking about these studies on how they compared interpretation services with an actual fluent translator, a fluent provider speaking to the patients, and there was actually far worse outcomes with interpretation services versus the provider speaking Spanish. and talking to the patients themselves. And I mean, obviously, like interpretation services are phenomenal. They're amazing, right? Like you can't always expect everywhere for someone to speak a certain language, right? Especially in California where it's super diverse. You know, we have people speaking Farsi, French, you know, all sorts of languages you can imagine. But it's just to highlight, like we need diversity in healthcare, and by us, you know, being a part of medicine, like we can bring these numbers down. Like that is the way we resolve this, right? And just to kind of highlight a little bit what Mario's saying, the Tuskegee research. What is it called? The Tuskegee what?
Yeah, no, just Tuskegee research
It's just
trials. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, this is probably gonna make you want to do it more. So like what Mario was saying, you know, the Black population was like essentially being studied, but what made it worse, far worse as well, was that you know they were isolated from medicine because these individuals, I think it was syphilis, they were trying to treat syphilis in the Black population,
Yeah.
and since it was a research study, they weren't allowed to get any other additional care from anywhere in the United States. And as a matter of fact, the patients that were in the study, who were forced to be in the study, they were actually put on some sort of blacklist where they weren't allowed to see or seek medical care anywhere in the United States if they were recognized. So they started, you know, which means like they had even far worse outcomes. Like they couldn't even seek help anywhere else. And obviously it's a different time, and I would hope nothing like that happens, but by us being in healthcare, right, Black, Hispanic, Latin, you know, in like anything, right, Native American, Pacific Islander, like we can be the voices to avoid that and speak against that and not allow that to happen, right? So just wanted to highlight that as well. And with that being said, if Mario doesn't have anything else to add, we can move on with this next slide.
All right. And so kind of the two main we're going to be highlighting here, like just to wrap up, why we care about diversity and why diversity matters. And there's been quite a bit of study that's been done over the last 20, 30 years looking at this. Number one, we know from the research that it improves healthcare delivery. And so in 2004, which is almost now 20 years ago, this was already on the radar of the Institute of Medicine. And they actually published a report 20 years ago talking about ensuring diversity in health professions. And some of the best arguments in favor of efforts to promote diversity in healthcare were essentially published in some of the articles. And one of this specific report highlighted here advocates for improving cultural diversity for reasons such as the fact that healthcare professionals from minority backgrounds are more likely to serve in minority and or underprivileged communities in which they are needed the most. And so what this tells us is that if you are from an underrepresented minority background, the stats show that you are more likely to go and work for an underrepresented minority community. And so that's kind of what the numbers were telling us almost 20 years ago. And as we can see here, I know this study was from 2004, but the reality is that there's still a lot of groundwork, a lot of work to do when we're looking at, for instance, the survey done by the American Academy of PAs. This year, 2023, we still have less than I think it was 85% self-reported as white Caucasian, and then the overwhelming minority groups were not responding. And so I think it again serves as a window into just this disparity in medicine of the lack of diversity for our providers from underrepresented minorities. Having a diverse healthcare workforce can help break down some of the linguistic and culture barriers that stand between providers and some of the most vulnerable community members. This argument in support of increased diversity isn't just based on anecdotal evidence. Studies have found that minority patients report higher rates of satisfaction when they receive care from minority providers. And so what this tells us is it essentially makes sense. If you are someone who is of a certain cultural background and you walk into that clinic, and I think Siri just picked up my voice and it's Googling stuff for me. But
she's hearing.
Yeah, she's here and she's active. But we know that, I mean, if we think about this, if you are someone who is from a specific cultural background, if you go to your doctor, to your PA's office, or to your dentist, and the provider that's wearing that white coat looks like you, talks like you, comes from the same cultural background as you, you're going to feel a bit more safer. Of course, that's not to discount the fact that you can have providers from different cultural backgrounds make you feel safe, but there is a cultural element there that, again, impacts patient outcomes. And so that's something that these studies have shown, and hopefully, again, is just a fuel to your own fire, for the fact that we need each and every one of you, who are hearing this information today, to continue to stay on course to become the provider that your community, that your culture needs and deserves. Because everyone deserves a culturally competent provider, a provider that makes you feel safe, a provider that understands. At least I can talk about being Mexican. And so if I get a patient who's like diabetic, like I completely understand the difficulties that they may face in laying off the tortillas, which in Mexican culture, if you're not aware, is often replaces, a tortilla will often replace a fork or a spoon. And so a lot of our Hispanic, Latino patients will often be eating a pretty high amount of carbs with every meal, just because of the simple fact that instead of using a spoon or a fork, they're using a tortilla to pick up the rice, to pick up the beans, to pick up the carne. And that's what I mean. It's like, insert whatever race or ethnic background that you're from, and I guarantee you that you have some insights into your upbringing, into the food that your mom and dad or family members would cook, and that is going to impact the way you deliver care, and ultimately improve the way we deliver healthcare across the board. And so the research done by the Institute of Medicine is not just was also supported by other studies. And so there's this private organization called the Commonwealth Fund, and their job is to actually look at the numbers and research on things that contribute to patient outcomes and higher patient satisfaction. And what they found, the Commonwealth Fund's rationale for increasing diversity among healthcare providers is that it helps decrease racial and ethnic disparities inherent in the current system. By conducting studies on the difference seen in race concordant and race discordant relationships between doctors and patients, the fund found that when providers share the same racial background as their patients, it can lead to higher patient satisfaction and even improved patient outcomes. So again, just reminding us what we've been saying at this point, that when you have providers that come from the same racial backgrounds as the populations that they're serving, we see higher satisfaction and more importantly, higher patient outcomes. People are healthier. People are listening to what their providers have to say and following those treatment plans. And then number two, in increasing the diversity of our providers, it also improves the competence of providers. And so it makes us as healthcare providers better. There is evidence to show that diversity can help healthcare providers. In one journal of the American Medical Association study, a survey of students graduating from medical schools across the country invited graduates to assess themselves on how prepared they felt to serve patients from cultural and ethnic backgrounds different from their own. And that study found that overwhelmingly, white physicians from schools with higher levels of ethnic diversity among their student populations felt much more confident about their cultural competency than those graduating from less diverse campuses. So again, it begs the question, or I guess it's not so much a question, but it's just a fact that the enrollment of students across these institutions, both medical schools, pharmacy schools, PA schools, it does not reflect the diversity of the United States. And so, and that's also, I guess, one of the things that we're highlighting here is the fact that having a diverse cohort, having a diverse set of classmates, again, makes you a better provider. And so I think for those students that are watching that are like currently interviewing for programs, and this is something that you would want to maintain in the back of your head, on your radar, is like, when you show up to these schools and look at these cohorts, are they overwhelmingly just one culture, one race, overwhelmingly one skin color, or when you go and visit this campus and see the cohort, are you seeing kind of that initial picture that we saw, where you have blacks, whites, browns from all different backgrounds working together, learning together, because that is going to impact your educational experience and ultimately improve your ability to be able to connect with other cultures. At UC Davis, and this is something that I'm actually pretty proud about the UC Davis PA program, is that they really put their money where their mouth is in terms of diversity. I had classmates who were from West Africa, classmates who were from immigrants from Afghanistan. I had classmates who were from different parts of Latin America. And so, again, speaking from personal experience, it was just a beautiful thing and really a privilege to be able to have classmates like that and just be able to pick their brains and again I'm a better provider because of that diversity in my cohort. And then lastly, to wrap up, and I wanted to make sure we get you guys out on time and leave some time for questions. Issues of race and ethnicity are never easy to discuss. Like, we're just going to acknowledge that and lay that on the table, not just because of their complexity, but because of the emotional responses that they can incite as well. However, these discussions and efforts to increase diversity among healthcare providers should continue. And that's why Omar and I are here today to talk about this, because if we don't talk about it, we're not going to see the changes in these numbers, in these stats, in the graphics that we provided, and you're not going to see a change in the communities that need that change. As the physician shortage worsens, PAs are increasingly finding themselves working in the underprivileged and isolated communities that would benefit most from a more diverse provider pool. And all of that to ultimately say that, to remind you guys that this is the diversity of the United States, and this is the goal, that the individuals wearing white coats across the country reflect this diversity. And so Omar and I hope that with this conversation and with these stats and with these numbers, and if you're watching this and heard this, that this would, again, just be that fuel to your own individual flame, that we need you in medicine. We need you. Your individual perspectives, your background, your unique childhood experiences are important, and they are gonna, again, impact your future patient in a positive way. And so even if you have feelings of imposter syndrome, feelings that I'm not good enough, or feelings that like I'm not meant for this, or people like me don't become PAs or MDs or DOs, that is just not true. And our communities need you to step up, rise up to this call to ultimately by 2050, 2060, have, again, the individuals wearing these white coats look like this picture here. Omar, I'll get off my soapbox now. I'll let you.
No, that was phenomenal. I couldn't have said any better myself. And like kind of what you were mentioning, like if you're feeling imposter syndrome, if you're feeling doubting yourself, like I can't do it, like all these negative, right? Essentially insecure thoughts that we all go through and are very understandable. Just know, like, we hope that this fuels your flame a little bit more, as you mentioned, fuels your drive and your motivation. And like I've shown before, like, underrepresented minorities, like we are dying, right? Like we're literally dying in medicine, and it can definitely be avoided. And the best way to help with that, or to flip that, is for us to be practicing in medicine, right? Like if you are having doubts for yourself, just know that medicine needs you. Like we all need each other there to provide better care and to be able to uplift everyone along the way. And I think that would essentially not only make someone else's, like the patient's experience far better, but like it will trickle down to them having a better day, and then them probably having their brother that has a mistrust in Western medicine to come in and to see, a culturally competent provider, and ultimately like live a longer life, longer, happier, with more quality of life with their loved ones. And just know that those could be your uncles, your aunts, those could be your cousins, your mom, your dad, and your lived experiences, right? Like your specific and unique lived experiences is what's going to make medicine better, right? Like knowing what you went through, your upbringings, and treating individuals as similar upbringings or look similar to you can make a big difference. Because like as we mentioned before, like there is a mistrust in Western medicine, right? Like especially from a lot of individuals that come from overseas, different countries. We probably already have a mistrust in the system overall. I mean, probably feel like, we aren't being heard or attended to properly. Um, and it's understandable, but like we can make a difference, right? But simply by just telling, like, for example, if I tell one of my uncles, like I know you've gone through a lot and you feel like you haven't been heard, but like this is why it's beneficial for you to start statins, which is like a cholesterol medication, right? And then being scared, right? Possibly because they don't know what a statin is. They just know it's a pill that you take and it's supposed to make you feel better, but it's honestly just adding another thing to their already busy lives. Like, why would they do that for their health when they feel good? And a lot of these things, like that, a lot of minorities suffer diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, right? Like those are like silent killers. You don't feel it, but you're slowly deteriorating your blood vessels and many things throughout your body. So just explaining to them and simplifying the complexity of medicine can help them feel like they have a grasp of their health rather than just being told to do this, do that. And I think like that comes a long way. Like I mentioned, this can help them seek care and it'll trickle down to their family and hopefully, feel comfortable going to the clinic and seeking care. We can talk about this all day for sure. Like it gets a little personal, but we would like to leave the if Mario has something to add, please do. But if not, we'd like to leave the floor open for questions.
No, that's pretty much all we had today. It's kind of a bit of a shorter session, and hopefully we'll be able to answer. I know we have 17 participants, so hopefully we'll be able to for sure get to everyone's questions. And they don't just have to be unique to the diversity of the profession. They can be anything and everything. We are here to hopefully just answer all of your guys' questions and again be a resource. And before we go into questions, I do want to highlight our emails here. You can always reach out to us, and you can reach out to me at themexicanpa@gmail.com. I also have the same handle for the Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube channel, and you can always DM me on any of those platforms. Or also one of the things that I like to see is when students ask a question on the YouTube channel for like a specific video, because 9 out of 10 times other students have that same question, and so me being able to respond on there, it's kind of like a forum that just stays there forever, and students are able to go and take advantage of your individual question. And then you can contact Omar at el.pa.trino@gmail.com.
So really quick, I think it's a typo, so my apologies. So it's instead of the .pa, it's .on. So
so Owen here.
Yeah, it's my initials. They took my my name.
Dang, bro. Dang.
I was gonna sue.
This whole time, all the pre-P students have been emailing you, and no one has gotten a response because you.
No. This is new. This is new. I just added it for these slides.
For sure. So yeah, with that, we will open the floor to questions. I'll stop sharing these slides, and then we'll just hopefully answer everyone's questions tonight.
All right, we do have a question. It says, I'm a psychology major that wants to be a PA. What are the requirements?
Take it away, Mario.
All right. So I'll preface with the fact that being like kind of like medical school, if you've ever heard of this, like the major doesn't matter that much. So you could major in psychology, biology, you could major in
English,
art history, English, underwater basket weaving. I know that's a running joke. But the reality is that more importantly is you need to make sure that you are completing the prerequisite, the pre-required coursework that is outlined by these medical graduate programs. And so what I would advise to that student, to anonymous attendee, I would say that really, if you want to be a PA, it starts by, again, doing your own research on Google. And really, if there's a program that you're interested in, let's say you're interested in the Stanford PA program or the UC Davis PA program, Google that program, and on their website, they have an outline of the courses that are required and the hours that are required of patient care experience and just everything that is needed to gain admission into a program. And so I would essentially say to kind of do your own research on that front. But typically, you're required to have your bachelor's degree, complete the prerequisite coursework, have a certain amount of patient care experience hours, and then complete the CASPA application, which is the centralized application service for PAs. That is like the universal application, or I guess not universal, but just in the US to gain admission into a PA program. You apply through the CASPA portal, which again is spelled CASPA. And so, yeah, those are kind of just some of the, like a surface level basic requirement overview for that student.
The way you have that memorized, what CASPA actually means, is actually pretty immaculate, I will say.
I'm like, it's too much memorization of scripts for YouTube.
Yeah. I guess one thing to add to that is, whichever school you go to, there should be a pre-health advisor. I would say like establish a relationship with them and see if they can give you any additional insight, because I'm sure they've seen, hundreds, if not thousands, of pre-health students. So as Mario said, I think do your research in general too, because it's for the most part, all PAs have like a certain similarity in what they require, like anatomy and physio, or, biochemistry, things like that. But individually, the PA programs like might want this class versus this one, medical terminology versus anthropology or something like that. So that's where your research comes in, I will say.
I have a question for Mr. Navarro. So you just graduated from UC Davis for the physician assistant program there, and then which kind of department are you working at right now?
So I am actually currently very blessed to have applied to quite a bit of jobs and have 2 job offers on the table in family medicine. I am Omar and I are both National Health Service Corps scholarship recipients. And so what that means is that the federal government funded our PA education. And so we each saved like $200,000, bro? What would you say?
At least.
Give or take.
Yeah.
And again, that is the National Health Service Corps Scholarship Program, NHSC. Save it, Google it, and bookmark that website. But through that scholarship, what is required of us is that once we graduate, we have signed a contract that says that we get to give a 2 to 3 year service commitment working at a specific clinic that receives essentially federal money, so a federally qualified health center. And so coming out of the UC Davis PA program, my job options were essentially focused and limited to FQHCs in the following 4 specialties. So I could take a job in family medicine, women's health, pediatrics, and psychiatry, those 4 specialties. But that is only for my service requirement. So after I complete my 2-year service requirement, I am done with my commitment with the NHSC, and then I am able to do the lateral mobility, the flexibility that students often hear about the PA profession. I'll be able to switch to like emergency medicine or to a surgical specialty if I have that desire. But right now, it's looking like family medicine is going to be the what we're going to be doing.
All right, our next question we have is, do you guys think that one of the reasons that there is less diversity is because of the lack of awareness of scholarships, or if any, there's so much to do to earn that scholarship?
Oof. I think it's quite a few things. I think scholarships are definitely one of them. Money, right? Like, I think there's a general sense of like fear with debt. And obviously going into medicine, it's not the simplest and most financially forgiving paths, I will say, right? Anything from interviewing to going to schools costs money, and it can deteriorate one from like pursuing medicine, right? And it's also time of not working, not providing for the family, not providing for your kids. It's difficult to get into this field, especially for individuals that aren't financially well off, right? Which a lot of us end up being like sons of immigrants and whatnot. So I think so. Scholarships, like as we mentioned, I wish and hope everyone would probably try to apply to the NHSE scholarship just because of how I think wonderful and beautiful the experience is. I mean, I can dive into how much I think why it's necessary and why it's okay to pursue it, even if you don't want to do family medicine or psychiatry, OB, peds. Because as this is open to everyone, by the way, RNs, NPs, PAs, MDs, DOs. But as a PA, one of the beautiful aspects of being a PA is like as Mario mentioned, the lateral mobility. We can move at any point to a different job and not necessarily even do a residency or fellowship, right? I think as being general medicine practitioners, me and Mario as NHE scholars, we're going to have general medicine down, right? Like it's going to be embedded in our brain. And the fact that we are a jack of all trades, practice general medicine, it's going to actually help us become better applicants to other specialties. So, obviously, if we do family medicine or primary care, we're seeing urgent care stuff. We're seeing like ortho stuff, broken bones. So if I want to go into ortho might be more inclined to hire someone that just did 2 or 3 years in family medicine. If I want to go into like emergency medicine, right, it's basically primary care, but just more urgent. Like a lot of people actually come into primary care as urgent care. So that's another added benefit, I will say, amongst many other things. What about you, Mario?
I would just add, going back to the question, that if the lack of diversity is solely dealing with, well, not solely, because that's not what they mentioned, but they said that is it part of the reason that like the lack of awareness of scholarships? Partially so, but I think the bigger thing is kind of like what Omar touched, and what we touched in these slides that we just talked about is, again, these kind of in a multifaceted factorial and kind of situation where you have everything from like the elementary school that you go to, the high school that you go to the college that you attend, to the income bracket that like you grew up in. All of these factors ultimately come together collectively to increase or decrease, unfortunately, your odds of producing an application that would be successfully accepted and would result in a seat offered for you to attend one of these programs. And so I would tell again, Jennifer, that it's ultimately multifactorial, but cost is certainly one of the deterrents for a lot of our underrepresented minorities. And because you often hear it, I was just talking to my barber literally yesterday, and she's thinking about going back to school to potentially do nursing. And she was saying, what if I take on all of this debt, all of this money, and spend all of this time and fail out or don't perform, like I should? And that is a very real fear, and it is a common one that unfortunately is keeping a lot of students that would otherwise be amazing providers, compassionate providers, from ever taking that leap of faith and saying, you know what, I'm going to do this. And so again, there are resources out there. There are scholarships out there. Omar and I are an example of this. We were awarded that scholarship. And if the NHAC scholarship is something that you would potentially want to do, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, when you will be applying to your PA program, I would say now, as a college student, as a community college student, really what the NHSC looks for is service. And so a commitment to service. And so what you want your volunteer experiences to look like is you doing exactly that, doing the soup kitchen, doing the volunteer work where you're going out and educating high school students and middle school students about healthcare professions, or being part of a clinic that serves that provides like free healthcare to underserved communities, and like you're just there maybe guiding the patient to the provider, or doing a blood pressure, or helping nurses get the vaccines ready. All of that stuff, all of that volunteer work that you're doing is crucial, and that is what you want to be doing now in your community college and undergraduate years. Get that experience, so by the time it's your turn to apply to the NHRC scholarship, because I think you have to write one essay and get like 2 letters of rec, but that essay is going to ask you, like, what have you done in your life that shows your commitment to service? And you'll be able to point and say, yeah, I did for 2-3 years, I served with this community medicine organization or this street medicine organization providing care for our individuals experiencing homelessness or individuals who were underserved or underinsured. So that's my little 2 cents for students who are interested in potentially becoming NHSC scholars in the future.
Yeah, and I think also like us, so much to dive into, right? A lot to dissect, but the more of us underrepresented minorities go into medicine, the more, little kids, other individuals will see a diverse set of providers, doctors, PAs, nurses. I know growing up, I didn't have a Latino or Hispanic provider, right? The more we see it at an early age, the more we know it's possible, right? Like kids start dreaming of being, a doctor, a PA versus something else entirely. And just to like wanted to share a little something that happened to me recently. So I was doing primary care and you know one of the patients that told me like, oh, you go to Stanford, this and that, yada yada yada, and then he started asking me questions, and then he said like, there's not many of you, and I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, he asked what my ethnicity was, and I said, my parents are from Mexico. He's like, yeah, most of you guys are janitor workers, construction workers, this and that. And honestly, like it felt like a microaggression, probably was a microaggression. But at the same time, it just like instead of internalizing and getting mad, which I did a little bit, I started to reflect like, damn, like this is true. Like this is what people see, underrepresented minorities, Mexicanos, in the workforce in general. And that's something that it like instead of like using it as anger and emotion, I want to channel it and to like motivate me, and also to share with y'all to motivate you. Like this is what people think, and it's actually the reality, right? Like the reality is not many of us in medicine, right? Obviously, like whether that message was supposed to come with harm or not, like it could have been communicated better, and that's okay. And we're gonna face a lot of obstacles like that, but the more we are in medicine, the less that should happen, because the more of us will be able to advocate for ourselves and keep people accountable for their actions, for their words, for their microaggressions. Yeah.
On to the next question. I think my dog son has a question. He's over here barking. I think anonymous attendee asked, should I provide an emphasis on diversity and lack of diversity experiences into my personal statement? And so yes, and the way to do this is by talking about your unique experience. So personal statements are going to ask you, like if you're applying to a PA or you doing CASP, it's going to ask you, why do you want to become a PA? And from the YPA question, you can actually extrapolate quite a bit of different questions from that. But one of them that I often recommend students to start with is open up with a story about why medicine. And in that story, it can be something about your childhood experience, about your college years, something about you interacting with medicine. Maybe you remember as a kid going and translating for your mom, and you're like a 12-year-old kid and you're over here, doing that kind of role. Or you had, a health emergency as a child and weren't able to access care. The way to highlight diversity in your personal statement is by talking about your own story, and not just saying like, oh, I want to contribute to the diversity of the PA profession, but show why your story, why your background, why your upbringing and the interactions that you had as a kid, as a young adult in college impacted your own life and your own desires in pursuing medicine and pursuing the PA profession. So I would tell again that student that yes, you're going to incorporate it in your personal statement, but more importantly, you're going to incorporate it by providing evidence of just the diversity and uniqueness in your own story.
All right, so our next question is, I know you both were EMTs for PCE, and they're asking if you primarily worked interfacility transport or 911, and which would be more beneficial to apply to for a ER tech position in the future.
Yeah, so I'll speak for myself as Mario eats his burrito bowl, I think. Just kidding. So that Mario has a more diverse set of background as an EMT, so I'll let him finish. But for me, I did primarily IFTs. I actually did mostly IFTs, or all IFTs, which is for those who don't know, interfacility transport, I think. So basically, we're like transporting patients from one hospital to another due to insurances, or because the hospital doesn't have those services, or because they requested, or because Kaiser wants their patient back. One of those things, right? Or transporting to a higher level of care or lower level of care. I did actually, our company did run 911 calls, but it was like on the rare side. It's like after like fire couldn't respond, or after the private companies couldn't respond, like then we will respond. So it was far less when it came to that. I did BLS, so 2 EMTs, and I did ALS, which is a paramedic and an EMT. And I did critical care transport, which is sort of what it sounds. It's 2 EMTs and a very experienced nurse, a nurse that like has a certain amount of years in ICU or ER. So like trauma based, doing respiratory therapist things. So these patients are typically in greater risk for mortality, essentially. So I got a little bit of everything. And then I actually did try to go into 911, but it was during a time when I was trying to, take classes, anatomy and physio, and it just doesn't work out. I didn't work out. I always made it to interviews, but then after hearing me and my plans, it's what didn't correlate with them. And then I actually never applied to ER Tech, and I really wish I did. I was told myself I should, and I never did. That being said, though, I always did want to do 911 or ER Tech, but I never did. So I made the best out of IFT. And I became field officer, started training EMTs, got close with my the paramedics, my managers, the bosses. I made the best experience possible. And I'll let Mario talk about it a little bit, but I think for me personally, it's I don't think it matters. I think it matters for what you want specifically. I will say quality over quantity, right? So I made the best. I think I was just making the best out of something. So if my shortcoming was not to go into 911 or ER Tech, then I made the best out of what I had, right? And I got those letter of recs from a manager paramedic that I worked with, right? I got teaching experience as a field training officer, and I got a diverse set of experiences through ALS, BLS, and critical care transport. So overall, I think it's what you want. If it matters for you to do 911, I would say 100% do it. Because it's what you want, and it's gonna. If you're passionate for something, it's gonna reflect on your application by the way you talk about it, and by the letter of recs that you get from it. So, yeah.
Also, I don't know if it's just. Oh, I was gonna add, but before we do that, I don't know if it's just me, Kristen, or Nishida. If you guys can confirm that Omar is sounding a little crunchy with his microphone.
Oh, really?
Or is that just me?
I think it sounds okay, so at least on my side.
Okay, it's me. It's my headphones. I think they're dying. All right. Thanks for confirming that, guys. No, I would add. So I worked as a IFT, did 911, and then did a year and a half working as an ER tech. And the biggest thing I would say, or to answer Ocampo's question, which would be more beneficial to apply to an ER tech position in the future? Obviously, the more experience that you can get. So if you can have IFT, CCT, BLS, ALS experience, of course, you're going to be a more well-rounded applicant. But more important than that, to get an ER tech position, typically, you need to know someone. Unless you're super qualified and you have 5-6 years of EMT experience under your belt, and you're also a phlebotomy trained. But for the most part, the techs that I have encountered with, the way to get into the ER is by networking as an EMT, working in the ambulance. When you go and take your patients to emergency rooms, you're going to be in there holding the wall with the patient, waiting to discharge the patient. After you discharge, that is your time to network. You're going to talk to MDs, to PAs, to nurses. You'll be able to use those opportunities to not only get your signature and say all right, I discharged the patient to you, but ask them hey, do you know that PA there? Can I talk to him real quick? And then you go up to the PA and be hey, my name is Mario. I'm an EMT, and I was wondering if I'm an interested pre-PA student. I was wondering if there's any opportunity I could shadow you. In the same way, you can network with the nurses and be hey, can I speak to your charge nurse? You talk to, and then you go up to the charge nurse and say, hey, my name is Mario. I'm one of the EMTs that works for American Medical Response. And I was wondering if you guys are hiring ER techs. I'm really interested in potentially getting involved in your emergency department in that capacity. And then the worst thing they can say is no, or usually what they'll say is, we're not hiring at this time, but bring in your resume the next time you're here and we'll add it to our pile. Or even better, you bring in your resume in person. Now they know they've put a face to the name, and then they'll ask you apply online. But when they see that application, and that charge nurse or whoever is gonna pick out your application and say like, oh, Mario, I know him. He works here in the ED, and you're gonna have that advantage of knowing someone. And because again, they're much more likely to offer a ER tech position to an individual who has already made a name for himself, that you're like a respectful EMT, an EMT who is, like they see your bedside manner as you come into the emergency department with the patient. And so I would say network as an EMT when you're in those ER departments. And that I think is going to be the biggest factor that will open doors for you to not only get an ER tech position, but also shadow PAs and MDs within the different emergency departments that you visit.
All right. Our next question we have is, can you explain more about applying for the scholarship and how you did that?
And so for this question, I would say one, as we typically do, I would want this student to do your research. And so I would want you to Google the National Health Service Corps website. They actually have a program overview where they like succinctly outline exactly what the requirements are, what kind of students can apply, and what exactly they're looking for. And one thing that I will say, just so that you kind of have it in the back of your mind, is that this application typically opens up in the spring of every year. And to apply, you already need to have your acceptance in hand. So you need to be a student who has already been accepted to a PA program, medical school, a nursing program. And once you have that, you can apply. And again, that application opens and closes sometime in the spring, and students are usually notified in the fall if they've been awarded. If you're a student who like gets accepted to a PA program in the summer, unfortunately, you're going to have to wait until the following spring to apply. But yeah, so those will be the two things: is do your research and just remember that the NHSC requires you to already be accepted, and 3, that the application opens up sometime in the spring. And again, it's the NHSC, National Health Service Corps scholarship program.
All right, so our next question is, during your application process to a PA program, were there any specific instances where you recall addressing healthcare disparities during like your interviews or your personal statement?
Yeah, so I think it's important to address it, but if you're speaking, for me, it was, I don't want to say easy, but it was easier that I was essentially talking about my lived experiences with healthcare, my parents' lived experiences, my loved ones' healthcare experiences, and the healthcare experiences I had as an EMT, as a provider, the disparities there. So essentially, by telling my story, I was already, hitting those points, and almost at the same time for the NHSC scholarship. Like, it's just, if you keep, it becomes a repetitive thing, right? You get used to talking about it. It's easier to think about it and have a conversation with someone, and then, but like actually to talk about it or type it out in a succinct, professional way, it takes practice, but you get better at it. You get better at it, and essentially just talk about your lived experiences. And if it's not, for whatever reason, you can't think of one at the moment, that's fine. What about one of your loved ones? Like, something like pretty relevant is like, do you have a loved one that was addicted to opioids, or it was part of the opioid epidemic? Did you see the way it trickled down onto their families or lives? Because diseases, addiction, first of all, is a disease. We need to know it's an actual disease. It's a brain disease, right? Essentially. Diseases in general, like, they don't just affect the patient, they affect everyone around them, so that might be easier to think about if you're struggling to think of a situation. Although I will say, try to reflect as much as possible, because you probably know someone, or it happened to you, or you think it's the norm, but it's not the norm. Possibly if you're a minority, you may think like, it's difficult to get adopted. Typically it's not, like, it shouldn't be, right? It shouldn't be. So try to reflect and see if you can find something there.
And then I would add as well, during my interviews, I was asked about like my background in service and like my volunteer work, and that was an opportunity there to, again, kind of like how Omar said, highlight my own lived experiences working with undergraduate organizations. Like one of the clubs that I was involved in at UCLA and where I did my bachelor's degree was Chicanos for Community Medicine, and through that organization, I went out to a few times to Tecate, Mexico, where we did a health fair for individuals who hadn't seen a physician, hadn't seen a health professional in 4, 5, 6 years. And we were out there providing health screenings and having these talks about cholesterol, diabetes, and providing vaccines and just meeting this need. And it opened like my mind to international health disparities and the issues and just the struggles outside of just the United States. And so again, all of that to say that yes, during your interviews, during your personal statement, what you're going to do is essentially talk about your own experience. And so I would again tell that student that really, if you're in college, if you're a first year, second year, third year, fourth year at a community college or university, try to take advantage of the opportunities to get involved with 1 or 2 clubs. And more than anything, know that quality over quantity. And so it is much more impressive for a student to be involved with an organization like Pre-Med CC for 1, 2, 3 years versus you being involved in 1 club here, 1 club there, doing a soup kitchen here, doing a volunteer event there. But there's no real evidence of your commitment to service and evidence of your ability to like be part of something for a long time, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for students who are willing to commit to medicine, because the reality is this is going to be your career. This is going to be a lifelong journey in medicine, and they are looking for people who are going to be committed to doing this for 20, 30, 40 years of your life. And so again, like, try to get involved in a quality organization, and ideally in your time spent in that organization, try to take advantage of not only the opportunity to get volunteer hours and network, but also try to become a leader within these organizations. Because again, we all know kind of like how as a high school student, you were involved, you took all your AP classes, and you were captain of the National Honor Society and president of this club and that club. That's still the same thing for medical graduate education. They want to see you being involved in different organizations, and not only being involved, but being a leader. And so again, just that is my encouragement for that question. And then moving on to the next one, Kayla asked, any tips or words of encouragement for reapplicants? I'm currently on my 2nd cycle and it hasn't gone as well as I had planned and hoped. Trying to keep a positive growth mindset, but definitely being a little discouraged. Before I dive in, I'm sure Omar, you probably have something to say as well, but I would tell Kayla that first, one of the things the first thing I'll say about this, and I've actually, I don't know why, but I've had some different students kind of comment on like social media platforms with this same question, or like DM me. And the first thing that I would say is that if you applied and didn't hear back, or you interviewed and were rejected, the first thing I'm going to tell you is that I'm proud of you. If no one has told you that, I want you to know that we are proud of you, because CASPA and this whole applying to PA schools, med schools, is a beast of an application. It is taxing physically, emotionally, mentally. And again, it's something to be proud of. And the second thing I would say is that you are, this upcoming year that you're going to reapply, or that you're reapplying your 2nd cycle, you are a much better applicant than your 1st cycle. You've learned how CASPA works. You've learned how to, write your experiences. And in all of this, it hasn't been in vain. It's been for a reason, and you are growing as a student, and you're increasing your likelihood of getting accepted. Every year that you apply, you're increasing your likelihood of getting accepted. But the big thing that schools look for, of course, is that the application that you sent in your 1st year, let's say you're applying to the same PA program again. If you apply to, let's say, Stanford or UC Davis this cycle, and then you reapply the next cycle with the same exact application, and there hasn't been any growth over that year, that is essentially a red flag. And I've heard this from admissions directors. And so what you want to view is if you weren't offered admission this cycle, what that means is that, all right, we're going to assess our situation. We're going to see what classes can we retake, what volunteer experiences can I do between now and the upcoming cycle to improve and continue to grow. Because if you haven't heard it yet, I know we call these years gap years and no student wants to take an additional gap year, but I want you guys to start thinking about and change your mindset about these gap years and view them as growth years, because that's exactly what this is. It's a year where you're going to be growing in your healthcare hours, in your patient care experiences, in your ability to study and get A's in your coursework. And you're growing as an individual and growing in your lived experiences. So by the time that you do get that interview offer, you're able to just go in there and just like show the plethora of evidence in your life that like this is what you're about, this is what you're committed to, and this is what you've been doing and are going to continue to do as a PA student. And then the last thing I'll say is that unfortunately the reality is that most students who are accepted into PA programs these days are reapplicants. And then Kayla, I would also tell you that I'm not saying that this is going to be you, but I actually had a classmate at UC Davis who applied 5 times. And so all of that to say that like be stubborn and keep working towards moving that needle in that direction of growing and becoming a better applicant. And it's not a matter of if you're going to get into PA school, but when.
I'm motivated. No.
You're gonna reapply more? You're gonna drop out of
No, I gotta reply. Yeah, and this is a main character moment. No, Kayla, I was going to just say like, first of all, everything Mario said, I completely 100%. I concur. Right. This is a main character moment for you. And I know it might sound daunting because of you're doing this all over again. But this is a main character moment. And you should know that. And you should know that and take advantage of that because as Mario said, now you are more experienced. Right now you've completed an application, and if you haven't, like you started filling it out, like that little edge is gonna be reduce your stress so far more just because you know which website to go to, how to fill it out, what are the requirements, and you have an edge, right? You're that much more experienced, and if you and like I don't know if you were doing pre-med CC before, but just doing that to toot our horn, but you being a part of this, if this is something new, that's already a step forward, right? An inch forward, which is like what matters essentially, right? Something to like just be conscious of, right? Like between last year and this year, like what has anything changed, right? Have you took on something more, or have you gained more experience in something specifically, whether it's volunteering, research, patient care hours? Because like they do want to see that your stats are, or your overall stats and resume aren't like stagnated, like stale, right? Like remain the same, plateaued. And I doubt they are, right? I'm pretty sure if you're really working for it, like you're putting in the effort, right? You have the due diligence and you have to show that. And I think an important thing is to also even consider like mentioning on the application, like how this is like carved your path or how it has reaffirmed your path into wanting to be a PA, because they know you want to be a PA because you're applying again, right? And it's important to highlight it, how this essentially has reassured your path, and overall, like just this is important right now to be resilient and to continue to persevere and seek mentors and teachers and community like organizations that can help you guide you there, right? And honestly, proud of you. Keep doing your thing. Keep going all in. Take it inch by inch, step by step. Plan accordingly and just take a deep breath. Also, make time for yourself, for your loved ones. De-stress. Don't burn yourself out, right? Like always have something in between that can like center you or ground you. That way you can set yourself up for success. And if you want to set yourself up for more success, watch all of Mario's YouTube videos. There's like countless of videos on the application process, on what to do with the requirements, like endless videos. That's something I wish I had, honestly, during my time. So now you have that resource and it's free. It's on YouTube. Support, subscribe, and like.
Thanks, bro. Thanks.
Yeah.
And then I'll just highlight also one of these other questions. Someone asked, how do you recommend we get patient care hours in undergrad? And I actually in the chat answered that question by putting one of my videos. I have a video entitled "How to Get Healthcare Hours for PA School." I talk about the different types of jobs, EMT, CNA, what those programs typically cost, and the like pros and cons of doing one versus the other. And so, again, I answered that in the chat for that student.
All right,
And
so our
for
last
the
question.
Oh, similar
yeah.
question, right?
Yeah, we have one more from Ashley. What medical experiences did you obtain prior to applying to PA school? I think both Mr. Nunez and Navarro talked about being an EMT. Were there other medical experiences that both of you, that either of you did also before applying to PA school?
I didn't have other paid clinical experiences. Everything else was healthcare related or volunteer related, so I can't really speak much about that. Yeah.
I'm kind of in a similar boat, but interestingly, even though it wasn't for long, and I mean, did I include it in CASP? I did. I actually worked as a casino EMT right before COVID started. Yeah, so I got hired on by the Seminole Band of Mission Indians Fire Department, and was like essentially a EMT inside a whole like Las Vegas like looking casino, and but COVID essentially. I got hired on, and then the same week that the COVID restrictions started, and then like the casino shut down, and then I was just essentially a like security guard where I was like scanning temperatures for everyone walking, all the workers that were walking in and out of the casino, and then I got laid off. But yeah, that's an interesting like fact about my experience background beyond the ER tech and EMT experience. But again, I would tell Ashley as well, and please check out that video of how to get your healthcare hours in PA school, because again, we talk about the experience, but also talk about other jobs like being a CNA, being a scribe, being a phlebotomist, being an occupational therapist. Like there's a whole list of different jobs that I cover, and the pros and cons, and like the cost of what those types of programs will run you. And so yeah, I would recommend that. And so I think that's pretty much it for the answered questions. And I know in respect of everyone's time, it is 7:34 p.m. And so again, if you haven't yet followed our social medias, make sure you follow at PreMedCC on Instagram and YouTube. And all of these sessions are available on the at PreMedCC YouTube channel. They usually release them about a week out. Also, and then you can follow me at the Mexican PA on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And you can follow Omar at el.pa.trino, El Padrino, on Instagram, TikTok, and then YouTube. Maybe we'll get that.
Maybe one day.
One day.
I do want to be like you and I grow up, so we'll see.
So yeah, thank you again for everyone who tuned in, and we hope that this session was insightful, and hopefully the main goal of this talk again was to get you guys fired up that we need you in medicine. And so if you're having doubts, if you're having that imposter syndrome, if you're having these like feelings or thoughts of like I'm not good enough, or I'm not needed in this space, or I'm not worthy of becoming a PA, a doctor, whatever, please reach out to us, because we're here to tell you that is that's not true. We need you in medicine. And so we'll leave you with that. And yeah, Omar, anything else that you would add?
I mean, yeah, we need you more now than ever, right? Like our tios, our tias, our aunts, our uncles, our mothers, our fathers, like our people essentially are dying, and it's very avoidable. And the easiest thing we can do is get ourselves into medicine, and just know, like, when you're having any doubts, right? Remind yourself that, like, your lived experiences are gonna make you an amazing provider, one that can acclimate to other cultures and people's perspectives and all that stuff, essentially. So just remember, hopefully this fuels you a little bit more. Hopefully it makes you dig a little deeper, to know it's not really just about you. It's about everyone who deserves the care that you can provide. Yeah, well, with that being said, we appreciate y'all. Hopefully you guys got something out of this, and we will see you in 2 weeks for the last session.
And that one will actually be pretty exciting. So we're bringing some special guests, some connections, to hopefully answer all of your guys' questions.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Nunez and Mr. Navarro. For everyone who's left in here, I just shared the scholarship like one more time, the National Health Service Corps scholarship link. So feel free, make sure to save that link, bookmark it. And yeah, I just want to thank both of our amazing panelists today. We reached all the questions and they're also like super insightful, really informative. So really thank you, and we'll see both of you in the next 2 weeks. Thank
All
you so
right,
much.
guys. Have a good Sunday. Bye.